So your home no longer fits your needs and you need to move, but you don't want to move twice. That's what we're going to talk about today. How do I move once while right-sizing my home? This is Jessica Duncan's Just My Opinion, and I'm Jessica. There's no handbook to owning a home, and that's why I go beyond the transaction to share my opinion for adulting made simple. So your home no longer fits your needs. You need to right-size your home. You need to move into a home that's going to meet your family's needs better, but you only want to move one time. Who wants to move two times? I know I surely would not. It's back-breaking work, literally. So you don't want to move twice. How can you do that? How can you achieve right-sizing your home? And what is right-sizing with one move? That's what we're talking about today. Let's dive into it. So first, let's address the big issue. Normally, when you want to move, there's an issue with your home, right? You're right-sizing, whether it's you're sizing up because you need more room now. Either your budget's gotten bigger, your family's grown, you work from home now, whatever your reasoning is, your home is no longer fitting your needs and you need a larger home. Or maybe your children have moved out of the house and you don't need as much space anymore. You don't want the maintenance anymore. Or maybe your family size hasn't changed, but you work on the road a lot more and you just prefer to have a small condo on the water when you're in town. Whatever the reason is, your home no longer fits your needs. And so now we need to right size it. Whether that sizing means the actual size of the home, whether it means the location of the home, whether it means the school zones, it could be in a different state. Whatever the reason is, you are right-sizing your home and getting it to meet your needs. But the hassle with doing that is a lot of times people need to sell one house to take the equity out of that to buy the next house. Well, how do I do that without moving twice? I got to sell a house and I got to find another place to live. And Jessica, I don't want to rent for a year. That would be completely wasting money. So how can I do this without having to pack up and break my back twice, move into a temporary location, and then move again? What we call it is a simultaneous close. And that is where we sell one property and we buy one property, hopefully on the exact same day. You load up your current home into your U-Haul or have your movers pack it up. You store it overnight. You're homeless for one night. Hopefully that's it. If everything goes perfectly, you stay one night someplace in, whether it's a motel or a family member's home. You close on both properties the next day. You get the keys, the movers move your stuff into your new home, or you take that U-Haul over there and move into that new home. So that is what we call a simultaneous close. And the goal is to do it at the same day. I like to do them within the same hour. Most of the time they come off without a hitch, but I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of moving parts there. And so I always have a contingency plan for our sellers. So the goal is to achieve that simultaneous close on the same day. We always have a backup plan just in case there is some delays, but then we also go into it with a lot of preparedness ahead of time to make sure we're going to be able to achieve this. So the first issue is we've got to sell the house, right? And then we've got to find something they want to buy, but we don't want them to be homeless. So before I even go down that path of putting their house up for on the market, the first thing I want to do is talk about what they want in a new house. What is the budget for the new house and what are the goals we're trying to achieve with this new house? What problems are we trying to fix that their original house has that we want to solve with the new house, whether it's location or size or whatever it is? What are we trying to solve? And then I'm going to take that a step further. I may actually take them out to look at properties. I want to make sure that they are realistic with their expectations. I want to make sure that we can solve that problem that they have. We can create a solution to that problem for the budget they have. Because what's the worst thing that could happen? I put their house up for sale and I get it under contract, and then we go to try and find another house only to realize we can't find anything to meet those needs and that price point because it's not realistic. And so I don't want that to happen. So a lot of times we'll start at the back end of it and go, let's make sure your expectations are real. We may even go look at properties because sometimes things look great online, but then when you see them in person, you're like, oh no, this is nothing like I would want. So I want to make sure those expectations are realistic. We're probably going to go look at a couple of properties, maybe 4, 5, 6 properties. And I'm going to make sure they're going to find more than one property, not just some rare diamond that was underpriced that they're like, yeah, well, there's one. Want to make sure those expectations are realistic. So that's step one. We're going to start with the expectations, make sure they're realistic. Then the next step we're going to take is looking at their current house. What are their expectations of what they're going to be able to sell that for? What do they plan to get out of that to be able to buy this new property? I want to make sure that we do a comparative market analysis. We look at what the house is going to sell for, do a net sheet for them, determine what they're going to walk away from. And then that helps them make sure they have the money they needed to get into the new house. So I'm doing a lot of prep work here to try and avoid problems in the end. I don't want to put someone's house up for sale and get it under contract and they have to sell it and not be able to find a home for them, or to only find out that they don't qualify for the home that they want to buy. So we're going to figure out how much money they're going to get out of their home, and then we're going to have them talk to a lender about how we're going to finance the new home. And there's a couple different options there. So we can do things such as the simultaneous close, where they're just transferring equity from one house to another. We can do things called a bridge loan. I've had people that in their particular situation, they could not put their house on the market and have showings until they were out of the house. So in that particular case, we can get what's called a bridge loan, and that's where we get a loan to go ahead and borrow against that house that they're going to sell, borrow that equity, and use it to buy the new house. And then we have a certain amount of time to sell their old house and pay that bridge loan back. Of course, there's fees in that because you're borrowing money. So sometimes we have to do that. It just really depends on the customer's needs and what they're wanting. Sometimes we don't even have to worry about that. Sometimes they don't have a mortgage on their current home, and maybe they're going to take out a mortgage on the new home. But once they sell the original home or the old home, they're going to then pay off the new home, right? Maybe they're downsizing and they're going to be selling their old home for a larger amount of money. And as soon as they buy the new home, they're going to finance it. And then once the old one sells, they pay it off. Well, those are all things to take into consideration when we're talking about how we're going to buy the new home, because they still have to qualify for it, right? So we're going to talk with the lender. We're going to figure out a good game plan to make this financial situation work for them, whatever their needs are. So step one is make sure the expectations were realistic on the buying side of what this new home and the needs it's going to meet. Step two, we're going to look at their current home and determine, is it a realistic expectation of what they're going to walk away with out of that home? Step three, we're going to talk with the lender and make sure we can find a way to fund this new purchase, however it be, whichever options are. Look at all those different options and find out which one makes the most financial sense. So those are the first 3 steps, and we haven't even put the house on the market yet, right? We're just getting prepared, and being prepared like this to me is what's going to avoid all of those happenstances that could happen and make these people homeless. So I normally do about 2 to 3 of these a month, which that's 2 transactions each. So you're talking 4 to 6 transactions minimum a month that we're doing of these. And there's a lot of moving parts. So I like to be in control as much as possible to make it so smooth for my customer. The more I can control and the more I can plan in advance, it's just going to make this a great experience, because the last thing I want is an unhappy customer. We work 100% off referrals, so we want our people happy and telling everyone about us. So now that we got those first 3 steps done, our next step would be to put the house on the market, right? So I'm going to create a marketing plan. I'm going to put that house on the market. And when I go to negotiate that contract, I'm going to try to give a little bit more time if I'm doing the simultaneous close situation. Now, if I'm doing a bridge loan situation, we're going to go find the house first anyway. But if we're going to do that simultaneous close, I am then going to try and negotiate out at least 60 days before closing. And the reason why is because my lender can normally close a loan in about 28 days. Well, when their house first goes under contract, if we have a contract that's only 40 days till closing, that only gives me 12 days to find a house. Well, what if there's not a house on the market that day that is what they want? I don't want them to be backed into a corner and feel urged to make a decision because they don't want to be homeless. So by pushing out and negotiating out the contract to sell their old home, I'm going to negotiate that out 60 days to closing. So that's going to give me 30 days to identify the property and then 30 more days to close the property. So now I've got 60 days, 30 to find the property, 30 to get the property closed. That also gives me a good bit of time just in case something happens and we go under contract on a home and God forbid something happens, like the home inspection was discovered something that we didn't expect and the buyer wants to back out of it and go find something else. We have some little buffer room in there just in case. So once we have negotiated their home under contract and we've pushed it out a good 60 days, that is our fourth step. The fifth step is going to be to go find their new home. So we've got their home old home under contract. Now we're finding their new home. And in that new home, I'm probably going to put, depending on the situation, some sort of contingency on the original house selling. Unless we're doing a bridge loan or different situations, we may not. But if it is contingent on that first home selling, then we are going to put the contingency in the contract to make sure we're protecting our buyer there in that situation. So now we have found their home. We have negotiated that contract. Now, the only thing I got to do is make sure they all balance and end up closing on the same day, right? Easy peasy, nothing, no worry in the world. So this is where it gets tricky. We stay on top of that lender. We stay on top of all the other parties involved, making sure, hey, are those repairs done? Hey, when will they be redone? Hey, when can we do that reinspection? When's that appraisal ordered for? We are balancing all of these deadlines extremely tight because we've laid out this plan and these deadlines of when everything needs to be done in the contract. And then our job is to stay on top of each party and make sure they're doing what they need to do to get our customers to the finish line. And the reason that's so important, remember, is because if we don't make that deadline, they could be homeless. We don't want them to be homeless, right? We got to make sure we meet these deadlines. So we stay on top of everyone. We make sure everyone is getting to that deadline. And then we're now 48 hours away from closing. What's going to happen is you're going to pack up your whole house. Either you're going to have movers come in and pack up your whole house, or you're going to rent a U-Haul, pack it up yourself. But the day before closing, so if we're closing, let's say on the 5th, on the 4th, you are going to have everything out of your house that evening. Your house is going to be clean, and you're going to stay somewhere for one night. Then the next morning, you're going to do a walkthrough on your new house, as well as the buyers of your old house are going to do their walkthrough. And then we're going to go to closing, and hopefully we've been able to arrange this at the same place to make it easy. That's what I try and do, is keep it at one title company so we don't have to go to 2 different locations. Sometimes we have to, but when we can, I will keep it at the same location. We go in, we literally sign for the sale of one property, and then we sign for the buying of the next property. If it's at the same location, it takes about an hour. If it's at 2 locations, about 30 minutes each place. And then at closing, you have now relinquished the keys to your old home. You have taken the keys to your new home, and you get to go unload that U-Haul or have those movers unload. And that is how you move people into a house with only moving one time. Simultaneous close, move one time. Or move one time using those other programs we talked about, such as a bridge loan or the ability to buy cash. There's so many different ways we do it, but our goal is to make it as seamless and as stress-free as possible for that customer. And by front-loading those conversations in the beginning and really setting expectations and making sure we understand everything is how we get through that process and have happy customers in the end who rave about us. Okay, so now we've talked a lot about right sizing locally, right? We've talked about moving one time, buying and selling, but moving one time locally. If you're doing it from out of state, this can create some more challenges. So let's talk about doing the exact same thing, but you are coming from out of state. So there's a couple more factors we have to start to think about then. One of the big ones is your financing. So if you are currently working in a job and you're not retired with income, that doesn't matter where you live. But if you're currently working for someone, there are a lot of stipulations with buying that new house and being able to work from the new location. So we're going to add a couple extra steps in there. We're probably going to start first off with talking to the lender. We're going to talk through what your job situation is and what your income is going to be here. A lot of people don't understand. They say, but I have great credit. My credit score is over 800 and I'm going to move down there and find a job. My credit score is great. I pay all my bills. Why wouldn't they give me a loan? Well, unfortunately, they have to follow federal guidelines that say you have to be able to prove you can pay the loan back. And if you're moving to an area that you don't have a job, that doesn't quite work. Now, luckily nowadays, we have a lot of companies that allow people to work from home. So maybe your company says that you can work remotely from anywhere, and getting a letter from them stating that you can still move here and keep your current job could allow you to go ahead and buy here. But again, it's going to depend on the situation. Sometimes you may have an offer here, depending on your type of employment, an actual offer, signed offer letter from a local business here may work. Sometimes it could be contract work. Maybe it's a 4-year contract. That may work. It really depends on the situation. But if you're moving from out of state or out of the area, even within the state, but you're moving from a long distance move, it adds another step that we're going to start from the beginning before we even look at expectations of what you're going to buy. We're going to start with that because you may actually have to have your job first. And so sometimes what we have to do is help someone. They're going to find their job. And then once they find their job, they have to have, sometimes, again, this all depends on the situation. Sometimes they have to have that first 30-day paycheck stub. Well, it takes 45 days on a job to get your first 30-day paycheck stub because of holding the first 2 weeks. So where do you live for 45 days? I got to be here and work for 45 days before I can close on the house? Don't worry, we have a plan for that as well. So in those type of situations, what we do is we have the client go ahead and find and secure the job. That way they know for sure they can buy a house. Then we go try and make sure their expectations are realistic. Then we're going to recommend they put their house up for sale there, wherever they're moving from, out of state or out of the area. And then we're going to find them temporary housing here through like a short-term rental. And of course, we have a lot of resources for things like that we can connect our people with to get into a short-term rental for 30 or 45 days or even 2 months. So they're not tied to an annual lease or anything like that. A lot of times they come furnished. That way it's real easy for them. Maybe they just come here to start their job before their family comes. But we're going to help them walk through that to make sure they have that temporary place to live. But that can be a real big issue with moving from out of state. There's a lot of other factors that we have to consider. The other thing we're going to do is that home that they have to sell that's out of this area or out of state, we're going to find them a really good agent there. So I may not know that market and can't tell them what a great expectation is to be able to sell their home there. So what I'm going to do is find them an agent. No matter where it is in the world, I will find them a great agent there. We look at their stats. We interview them. So if you need someone outside of my area, let me know. We will find you someone good. But I find that person for them, interview them, and connect them with them. And then I'm going to stay in close contact with that agent to make sure everything's moving along on that end, to make sure it moves along on this end. We're going to work really closely together to make sure we achieve this goal for both of our customers. So an example of when I've done this from out of state is actually I work with a couple different departments at the local hospitals a good bit to help them relocate people here, whether it's doctors or vice presidents or things like that. And so a lot of times when they come, they're coming to the market, but they need to sell a house from someplace else. We help them find a temporary location to live in and sort of get to know the area too over about 2 months while they're here, while we put their house up for sale and their family is normally staying there in it in another market. So we connect them with the agent there, and we've done this successfully with several people who've relocated here for our hospital, but we were able to get their house sold, find them something here, and do a simultaneous close where they closed on both houses on the same day. One of the spouses stayed temporarily for about 45 days in a short-term rental. And then once we closed on both houses, the family came down here. Actually, they ended up stopping at some other family's house nearby for about 2 weeks and visiting during the summer before they ended up moving down here and moving into the house. So we really made it a seamless. We really made it a seamless transition for these people as much as we possibly could. Yeah, and we've also helped a lot of people move out of the market this way. So a lot of our military people or even non-military who have moved out of the market have reached out to us and said, hey, I need to try and time this, whether an agent sent them to us to help us or they sought us out saying, hey, I'm moving to North Carolina, but I need to buy a house there, but I need to sell my house here to buy one there. How many days is my house going to be on the market? So we really sat down and created a strategic plan. They needed to be there by a certain day, looking at their neighborhood, looking at the average days on the market. When do I need to put their house up for sale to be able to get it under contract in time to achieve that date that they need to be there? And so we did that exact thing, and I worked very closely with that agent in North Carolina. We got their house under contract here, got it up for sale here, got it under contract. As soon as we did, I'm like, all right, time to head to North Carolina. Go find your next home. Turned them off to the agent in North Carolina. They went up there, were able to find their home, and we were able to close on both in the same day. So how that works in that situation is they actually left here the day before with all their furniture and everything. They went up there, did their walkthrough, and then signed all of their documents for both properties in North Carolina. So even if you're moving out of state or into the state and you're doing that simultaneous close, it doesn't mean I have to sign in one state and then go to the other state to sign. You can sign both documents at one location. Normally, you're going to want to do that in the location that you are going to be moving to, right? Because when you're buying a house, the lender really likes you to be in location to sign those documents. They don't like to do it by notary as much, which is what it's considered when you're in another state. They like to do it in person. So you want to probably do it wherever you are moving to. But sometimes what we do for our sellers is, let's say they're going to go ahead and leave town 2 weeks prior to closing on their home. Well, selling your home, the closing documents are not as date specific as buying, the documents that have to be notarized. So we'll have our people go ahead and come in 2 weeks prior to closing, go ahead and sign all their paperwork so they don't have to deal with it at that move time. Go ahead and get that out of the way. They can go ahead and move to their new location or start heading towards their new location. And then day of closing, they do have to sign again, but it's a quick DocuSign. They can do it from their phone anywhere and make it easy. And so those are just some things that come up when you're moving in or out of another state or long distance. There's a couple more challenges there, but we've got a ton of experience with them. And as long as you do that proper preparation ahead of time, it's going to make it smooth, easy transition and not break your back trying to move all your stuff 2 different times or waste a lot of money and signing a year lease and end up renting for a year. So each week we like to give you a home hack. What is a home hack? It is a tip, an app, a gadget, whatever, just something to make life easier. And I try to somewhat relate it to whatever that episode's about. So since we're talking about this episode, doing a right sizing of your home, moving with one move, I'm going to talk about some ways you can try and find a really good agent in your market. So maybe you don't live in the Gulf Coast of Florida where we work, and for some reason you're scared to reach out to me and ask me for a good agent because I will find you someplace wherever you are. But in that case, if you want to do the research on your own, I'll tell you a great place to start, and that is Realtor.com. If you go on Realtor.com, you can search an area and see the agents in that area. Now, depending on your state, depends on how much information you can see. Luckily, in Florida, we're pretty transparent, so we don't hide a lot of information here. So you can go on Realtor.com and search a area and see how many transactions an agent's doing. Do they sell houses in your area? You can see how they photograph the houses and market the houses to help you determine who's going to represent you well. Some areas you do have to be careful though, because they don't show as much. So you just want to do your research on that area and make sure you're finding someone that's got good recommendations. And my home hack this week, if you're trying to find a good agent in your area, is Realtor.com. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you want some moving tips, make sure you check out our episode we did on how to pack and move and make it simple. If you like the content and you don't want to miss an episode, make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as we release. If you have a topic you want us to talk about or a question, don't forget to DM me and I might just mention you on the show. Remember, it's just my opinion.